Hello everyone and welcome back to the NPC Dungeon. Today I'm going over a topic that I've been wanting to cover pretty much ever since I started this channel. I mentioned it in my last episode on player engagement and in my very first episode which was on adventure hooks. I'll leave links to those in the description and there should be a card coming up on your screen right now for each of them if you're curious. Anyway, today's topic, as promised last week, is all about plot twists. Plot twists can be tricky and it can be all too easy to do them wrong, but of course the easiest solution is not always the correct one, and that is why today I'm going to be talking about things about plot twists from the negative, from what not to do, and then going from there and talking about how to correct these unfortunately all too common errors. I just said it's all too easy to mess up a good plot twist, but let's back up for a second. How? What kind of mistakes and pitfalls am I talking about? As I usually like to do, I'm going to start with some examples. It can be easy to say, have an NPC who has been friendly to the characters suddenly try to kill them. Sounds fun, right? You can also pique their curiosity and have a long dead palace rise out of the ocean that they didn't expect. Or hey, you can even go off the deep end and have the whole moon fall out of the sky. And as you might have guessed based on the title of this video, I'm going to use those three examples to highlight three different ways that plot twists can go wrong. Now, I want to make it clear to begin with, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with those three examples that I just gave. Any one of them could be made to work. You could have NPC flip out and attack the players. You could have a palace rise out of the ocean, and you could even have the moon fall out of the sky. It's just that these three examples zero in on certain points, and the different examples make certain points clearer than others. And also, these ideas aren't particularly good examples of plot twists, at least not on their own. After all, no example is a good example of a plot twist on its own. As always, as I often like to say, what works and what doesn't work depends very much on the kind of game you're running and on the story itself. And we're going to start with a point that's all about this, and it's make sure that you set up for your plot twist. So let's get started and let's learn something. What do you mean, you might be saying? Isn't a plot twist supposed to be surprising? Yes, you're right, but blindsiding your players with some out-of-left-field change to your story isn't a plot twist. It's a cheap trick and a good way to take away your player agency really quick. This is where the moon falling out of the sky example comes into play. Admittedly, this example is a bit of a caricature, but hopefully I'll make the point clear in a second. Let's say you have your players trying to divine something from the sky for whatever reason. Maybe they need to see what will become of a king or queen soon, so they talk to some NPC who's a very powerful diviner, and the diviner says that the moon is falling out of the sky. Sure, it could be fun, but more likely than not, you're just going to get some blank stares and confused looks. Admittedly, I've done similar things and made similar mistakes in the past, and if you want to hear about some of my past mistakes and blunders, including those like this, let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to get around to them in a story. Okay, well, so how do we fix it? Well, by leading up to it, of course. If this campaign was about celestial bodies and your players found out that something screwy was going on at the stores and that it was affecting the material plane, it would be a lot easier to lead up to this. Maybe the moon in your world has some kind of magical powers, and maybe there's some kind of cult that worships it. If your world contains powerful magics capable of doing such things as bringing the moon down to the material plane, and if there's an NPC who your players find out about and has potential ties to that moon cult and would certainly stand to gain something from whatever power the moon might provide, then sure, go for it. That plot sounds absurd, and I love it, and I'd love for someone watching this to run that campaign and let me know how it works for you. See, it's kind of like leaving clues. Nowhere did I directly say the moon's going to fall out of the sky, but I gave subtle hints to it so that when it happens, it'll be completely obvious. And this works because there's nothing more satisfying in a plot twist than something that you should have seen coming. Just why do you think that Sherlock Holmes mysteries are so popular? Because all the clues are present throughout the story. And speaking of that, I released an episode on mysteries recently, if you want to learn more about that, and I really recommend you check it out. I'll leave a link below and a card above if you want to. But you might be thinking, what if they figure it out? Well, so what? So what if they figure it out? The story isn't some magnificent plot that you can try for your players to marvel at. You want your players to be trying to unearth your plots and push the story forward. And if they figure something out that you didn't intend to, great. You should be proud of yourself because you made your story clear enough for it to not only be understood, but also predicted, and in something as meandering as D&D, that's no easy challenge. But even more than that, you should also be proud of your players for figuring it out. Now they know what they know, and they can plan and react to it. And you should reward this. Sure, their plan won't go right every time, but even if they do prepare, but it should definitely be easy for them if they do. And on the contrary, the last thing that you want to do is punish them for figuring it out. But I'll talk more about that in my next point. Some people introduce plot twists at the last minute as a way of keeping the players from being right. Basically, the thought process is, you predicted my plot, well, I'll show you who's in control here, I'll just change it. Please don't do this. Please don't do this. It's abusing your power as the DM, and it's a cheap, dirty trick, and it's one of the things I was referring to earlier when I mentioned how not setting up for your plot twist can ultimately take away player agency. Think about it. Trying to take away this victory from your players is like not setting up for your plot twists in the extreme. You're doing it on the spot, so of course you have no time to plan for it, plus you're doing the the added thing of just being rude on top of all of this. It's sort of like when you're watching a show and the writers were setting up for a certain thing, a thing that most of the viewers figured out, and then halfway through the season, they changed it so something completely different happens because the viewers figured it out. You ever feel cheated when that happens? I certainly do. It's cheap and it's unsatisfying, and it's how your players are going to feel if you do any of this to them. For another example, it's also like when someone tells you a riddle, but they conveniently leave out a part of it and then smile triumphantly when you can't get the answer. Or it's also like when someone teaches you a game, but leaves out some rules and then does the same when you lose. It's cheating, and it's rude, and it's inconsiderate. Don't do this to your players. It's not funny, it's mean. It's in the same vein as doing their dice rolls for them so that you can control the outcome, lying to them about the success of their dice rolls and plans, and trying to intentionally mislead the things they may do. These are all bad habits, and they're all to be avoided. But if you want to know more about these, let me know in the comments if I should do an episode on DM mistakes that you should avoid. I already did one on new DM mistakes, by the way. I'll leave a link below and a card above if you want. But if you want, I'll do one on general ones in the future as well. Anyway, for now, let's talk about one type of rude plot twist that I could maybe kind of understand, and then go over why it still fails to the same logic that I just mentioned. But to do that, we're going to need to use one of the 3 examples that I brought up in the very beginning of this episode. Let's say that you want a friendly NPC to go and try and attack the players. Now, how is that any different from the moon example? Well, this plot twist comes from the fallacy that the plot twist that is the harshest will be the most surprising, and that might have some truth to it, but again, if you just throw it out of left field without setting up for it, you're just being rude. If you're going to have a harsh plot twist like this, you'd better set up for it, and the harsher the plot twist, the more you need to set up for it. Plus, your players should know what kind of campaign they're getting into. If you're going to have harsh plot twists like this, let them know in advance, not what it's going to be, that you're going to do it. Anyway, if you want a friendly NPC to turn on the party, to go back to this example, don't just have it happen. Think, why are they doing it? And then show hints to subtle changes in their disposition, maybe as a result of some complication of their backstory, and show parts of this complication. Hint at it, like I said earlier. And again, I want to mention this one more time. If they see a plot twist like this that you have coming, again, that's great. Just because your player saw it coming does not mean the plot twist still doesn't exist in some way. The plot is still tending toward it. Your player's discovery of this is now the plot twist, and it's now up to them to react to it. The point of a plot twist is to push the story in an interesting direction. The fact they have to react to it now means the story is moving in that direction. I'm not saying to ignore what your players do and have your beloved plot twist just happen anyway. What I'm saying is the exact opposite, actually. Let them react, let them have agency, and let them succeed in stopping whatever obstacle that you have placed before them. And that is one of the single best uses of a plot twist. It certainly pushes the story in some interesting direction, I think. And now for my last point, and it's all about making sure that you've fleshed out whatever changes you have planned for your plot twists. This will probably be my shortest point in this episode, and as you may have guessed, I'm going to use my last remaining example to help us out here. It's the one about the palace rising up out of the ocean. Now, obviously, set up for it. Obviously, don't just do it because it's the villain's palace and you want a random rude encounter for your players because you think it'll surprise them, but you also want to make sure that you plan for it. Plot twists aren't just shiny things for your players to look at. If you have a palace rising up out of the water, your players are hopefully going to want to go and explore it. And the same goes really for any potential interesting plot twist. New NPC, your players will want to go talk to them. Falling out between some important figures, your players might want the details of the drama. And, I mean, you could put up some kind of wall in front of them to make interacting with said plot twist impossible, like maybe making the palace too far away and impossible to reach, but then what's the point of even having it? Like I said earlier, the point of a plot twist is to push the plot into some interesting direction, and if the players aren't involved in that, how can they feel like they are pushing the story forward at all? And how can they help but feel cheated and led along by the nose? Also, I have a whole series on player immersion that talks about just this. If you're curious about it, I'll leave a link below and a card above just in case. But that's it. I hope this episode was interesting and helpful, and of course, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out this week's story. It's the next installment of the story I've been telling recently on this channel, and I hope you enjoy it. Also, come back next week where I'll talk about things that I wish I knew when I first started DMing, and where I'll continue the tales that took place within the cave system underneath the dead hole. Again, thanks for watching, and until next time, let's learn something.